I'm joined here with my colleague and partner in government, the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams. I want to tell everybody that this is today the result of a culmination of many different meetings and hearings that we've had based on conversations that we started earlier this year in January. Now, we all know that in the educational system, which is a vast system, in the education department, there are many different issues. One of the issues that are being discussed is how is it that we get better around diversity. And I know that, and we know that the Chancellor and the DOE and the City of New York have laid out a plan on how to deal with that diversity. The fact is that when you look at a particular area, the Borough President of Brooklyn and I don't have to speak for him, he'll speak for himself, we believe that we have a problem. We have a problem when it comes to the fact that the specialized high schools in the City of New York are segregated. There's no other way of putting it. We know that when you look at the 8 specialized high schools, Black and Latino students are underrepresented. We also know that there's a segregation with regards to economics. For instance, the statistics are undeniable. 77% of those individuals in our gifted and talented schools are in the, 77% of citywide students are under the poverty level. Those in the gifted and talented are only represented by 43% of those students. When you look at the citywide student body, 70% of the student-wide are Black and Latino, but only 27% of them make up those in gifted and talented programs. In other words, when you look at both specialized high schools and the inability of seeing our kids in Black and Latino or poor communities represented in gifted and in specialized high schools, we know that the pipeline that traditionally has fed those specialized high schools have been gifted and talented programs. And so we have seen an inability of having inclusion of Black and Latino students from the gifted and talented classes and programs feeding our specialized high schools. So we have a problem, and based on that, we were able to put together a task force. We were able to have members of those task force, some of them who are here today, comprised of our PEP members, of our parents and our CECs, of different non-for-profit and advocate organizations. And we heard from parents all over the City of New York, namely from our borough. And because of that, and based on those hearings and testimonies, we did a report. This report today is a 22-page report. We have recommendations, and we are hoping that the DOE, that the Chancellor work with us so that we can better these statistics, so that we can make sure that we have more representation in our gifted and talented programs, so that we can have more gifted and talented citywide schools in our boroughs. The Bronx doesn't have any, Staten Island doesn't have any, and we believe that then this will be a better feeder system so that we can have more representation of our students in our specialized high schools. I want to turn the mic over to the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams, who has partnered up with my office, his office. I want to thank your office, Eric. I want to thank those men and women who have been like Janelle Chacon, our PEP member of the Bronx, and so many others who took their time, who were able to hear from parents, hear from educators, and have helped us comprise this report that we are submitting to the Chancellor and to the DOE today. Ladies and gentlemen, our Brooklyn Borough President, my partner, Eric Adams.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we would love for the task force members to come join us. This was part of your initiative, you know, taking time out to make this happen. And really, we cannot say enough about the Bronx Borough President, Ruben Diaz's commitment to this conversation. He has been consistent around talking about this issue. The specialized high school and gifted and talented program pipeline has a leak, and the DOE traditionally, under this administration and previous administration, have failed to fix that leak. Young people who are qualified should be able to attend a gifted and talented program based on their academics, not based on their economics. Clearly, when you do an analysis across the city, there's a sad pattern that is developing. The more affluent you are, the more likely you are able to get into a gifted and talented program, and the numbers do not lie. These are not fake news. This is sad news that is saying our young people of color in the city of New York does not have the same opportunity to excel when they possess the talents, the skills, and the academic ability to do so. Our analysis through our hearings showed that in certain parts of the city, there are cultures of how do you, number one, identify the student who is gifted and talented, two, ensure that he is tested at an early age, and three, most importantly, that he is or she receives all the support they need to succeed. Everything from testing to transportation to location of the school to ensuring that the parents have the tools they need. Two systems, separate and unequal, unacceptable in the city of New York. Particularly when you look at the numbers on these charts and graphs here that show over 70% of the students in our public school system are of color, yet less than 30% are actually in gifted and talented programs. These are terrible, dismal numbers, and lip service is what we heard of the past. We're dealing with a progressive mayor that likes to equalize the playing field for all of our students. No area needs a better level of equalization than the gifted and talented programs. It is an indictment on the system when historically in schools like Brooklyn Tech, the student gifted and talented population was in the area of 30 and 40% in the 80s. Now is at a dismal number. You are lucky to see a person of color in that school that's not part of the janitorial staff. This is something that must be turned around, and you can't do it by tinkering around the edges. We must go in and be creative in our thought and be creative in our analysis. I'm asking the Department of Education and the Chancellor to meet with the police commissioner to adopt the CompStat model of analyzing what we're doing with the gifted and talented program. What does that mean? Real-time analysis. Identify the students from the time they take the exam at the beginning of their school years, identifying that teachers and parents are received in pre-K, that they are given the application in the process, identify the outreach that we are participating in, identify the test scores that students are taking, everything from quizzes to final exams, analyze and track so that we will ensure that we keep an eye on these students and give them the support that they need. Testing prep should be free. Our task force and discussion revealed that those students who can pay for test prep are more likely to be prepared for the only sole source of information that places a child in gifted and talented programs, and that's the test. That's wrong on the start. Ivy League schools and colleges and other areas of academia have identified that it's more than just being able to check off a question or to darken a circle that determines if a child is gifted and talented. Students with IEPs should be able to be analyzed for gifted and talented. It's more than just academic. It's the ability to use the creative side of the student so that they can explore the full development of their gifts and talents. And we are not doing that now. This issue must be resolved, and that is why the borough president of the Bronx and I have come together and sound the alarm. This report is only inning number 1. We're going to be here for the entire 9 innings to make sure that every student has an opportunity to play on the field of gifted and talented. The borough president of the Bronx, Ruben Diaz, was the benefit of a gifted and talented program when he was coming up. He knows the importance of allowing an individual student to develop their qualities and abilities. He is invested in this. I am invested in this. The chart must change and move in the right direction, that the system must be reflective of the diversity of the city, the diversity of our school population, and it does not do that now. A separate and unequal system is unacceptable in the city of New York, where this is one of the most diverse places in the entire country. We get it right here, it will get right across the country. Again, thank you to our partners. I want to thank all of our task force members for just taking the time out to hear the hours of testimony. We want to thank the alumni associations who played a major role in educating us on some of the intricacies of understanding this topic and how do we remove the barriers of gifted and talented program. Our students have the staying power in these programs. The DOE must now have the willpower to make sure that this happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Borough President. So among other things, some of the recommendations that we are submitting here are: number 1, all communities must have equal access to gifted and talented programs in kindergarten. Number 2, all students in public pre-K programs should be and must be tested. We would offer these tests with an opt-out clause for parents. We believe that at a very young age, we can identify who these students are, and we should do this in a way where every single student has that opportunity to be identified, not based on teacher or principal-parent relationships. Number 3, we believe that every community should be offered gifted and talented classes. We heard, for instance, from one parent that their child tested, their child was accepted, and yet when they went to the school at the beginning of the school year, they were told that there are no school seats of gifted and talented programs for that student. In fact, when you look at this chart, you would see that the Bronx and Staten Island does not have citywide gifted and talented schools. In my borough, over 250 students have to travel outside of the borough of the Bronx simply to be able to benefit of the opportunities of gifted and talented. When you look at, as the borough president, Eric Adams said, the Student Alumni Association of Specialized High Schools, they testified in front of us that it was because they were in gifted and talented schools that they were able to be better prepared to go to these specialized high schools. But not only that, so were their classmates. And that was the reason that back then the pipeline worked, where you saw more of a diversity in the specialized high schools. We believe that transportation should be free when you have intra-borough services. In other words, We heard parents from the Bronx and from Brooklyn testify that in some cases they had to pay thousands of dollars for school bus services so that their kids could be educated in Manhattan. We also heard from many other parents that they could not, that their children could not benefit from going either to gifted and talented classes or specialized high schools for that matter, because they could not afford those thousands of dollars to transport their kids. One parent said that their daughter was 6, 7 years old, passed the exam for gifted and talented, was accepted, but they did not have the ability to pay, and they could not have the time because of their work to be able to get on the train, take their kid to another borough, and then get back to work on time. So simply, their daughter had to lose out from these benefits. We have also seen that 35% of the kids who have been eligible for gifted and talented programs not be able to accept them because locally in their neighborhoods, they just don't have the services, whether it's through citywide schools or simply by not having gifted and talented seats in their communities. We're hoping that as it relates to specialized high schools, just to reiterate what Eric said, that test taking is not the sole arbiter as to whether or not a student could be accepted to to the specialized high schools. Now we know that the Heck-Calandra bill that passed in 1971 was a bill that spoke to the 3 major schools that we know, Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, and Stuyvesant, where we have an additional 5 high schools that were not around when that legislation was passed back in 1971. So one of the things that the DOE could do immediately is have those high schools, those 5 specialized high schools, accept other criteria that is not necessarily just the test, while we work on legislation to address the 1971 Heck-Calandra bill. We know that Harvard, Yale, and other Ivy Leagues do not make their decisions today solely based on exams or the SAT scores. So if Ivy League schools can look at other criteria, then so can the Department of Education. There's segregation in the overall Department of Education. There's certainly that in the specialized high school system. We believe that it could be addressed now. We believe that we could start by creating that pipeline again of gifted and talented programs that we know worked and fed our specialized high school system in years past. Any questions?
Yes, the borough presidents, Ben Chapman with the Daily News, the borough presidents will be in a position to have unusually direct impact on policy if mayoral control lapses. Is this something that you guys are planning on pushing in that case?
So we are totally optimistic. Again, Eric can speak for himself, that before 12 o'clock strikes tonight, the legislature will come up with a mayoral control expansion bill. With that said, today we still have the DOE, and here we are today making sure that the DOE does what they need to do and giving them recommendations. In other words, we are exercising our influence right now, and certainly should we go back to the Board of Education, which nobody wants. But should we go back to that? I think it's safe to say that we will continue to push so that we can fix the pipeline, so that we can have more and more diversity and programs that would benefit communities like the Bronx, like Central Brooklyn, and other parts of the city of New York.
Yeah, and I agree. We're hoping at midnight we do not awaken the Dracula of yesteryear of the school board and the disorder of the system. So our consistency on this issue will be consistent if we return to the old DOE model or if it's the continual model that we hear today. The reality is that the pipeline that feeds children into gifted and talented program has a leak. The DOE must repair that leak. Our children have the staying power to go through these programs. The DOE must have the willpower to place them in there. We don't see that willpower now. Our children's academic achievement should not be based on economics, it should be based on academics, and that is not the reality we're seeing now, and we're going to be consistent in this happening. If it's the old system or the system that's currently in place, this must be tackled.
Brevemente en el español, I don't know if Noticias wants a little bit of Spanish here, pero estamos aquí, yo con este servidor, presidente del condado de Bronx, Ruben Diaz Jr., con el presidente de Brooklyn, y algunos miembros de un grupo que hicimos un sinnúmero de vistas públicas, donde ahora le estamos sometiendo un reporte al Departamento de Educación, porque creemos y sabemos que las cifras nos enseñan que nuestros niños prodigiosos no tienen las mismas oportunidades porque no hay programas en nuestras comunidades. Tenemos un sinnúmero de recomendaciones, se las estamos dando hoy a la canciller del Departamento de Educación y ojalá que en el futuro tengamos la diversidad, los programas, la oportunidad para todos los niños de la ciudad de Nueva York, no solamente en algunas comunidades.
Excuse me, did you say Ms. Farina don't do it like to do for community? No?
What we're saying today is that when you look at testimony, when you look at our statistics, the proof is in the pudding. We have a segregated school system, especially when it speaks to offering our kids better educational opportunities. When you look at the specialized high schools, even though we have 70% minority student body in the city of New York, only 10% of the students at specialized high schools are minority, Black and Latino. When you look at what has been traditionally the feeder system and the system that prepares those students to be able to go to specialized high schools, the gifted and talented programs has been exactly that. And there we see that we don't have enough seats, we don't have enough services, and certainly we don't have enough schools in the Bronx, Staten Island, Central Brooklyn, and in other communities. And so whether it's this administration and this chancellor or previous administrations, unfortunately we have seen a lack of diversity. Unfortunately, we have seen a lack of resources. And like the borough president said, this pipeline has been broken. It needs to be fixed. And we have a report today, thanks to capable men and women who have been part of our public hearings in our boroughs. We have good recommendations here. It doesn't mean that these recommendations are the only ones that to be accepted, but it's a good place to start. And we're hoping to work with the chancellor, with the mayor, and the rest of the city of New York to correct a system that has proven to be broken.
Any other questions from the press?
One question about mayoral control and your planning for that. What are you gentlemen planning in the advent that you have to make appointments? Do you have people selected and do you feel like you'll push to have the control return to the mayor's office the way that it was returned in 2009?
Again, I don't think that there's anyone who wants to see the old Board of Education. With that said, not just myself and not just the Brooklyn Borough President, but I know the other 3 borough presidents. Just like it happened back in 2009, I'm sure that we'll all have capable individuals that we would be appointing should there be a Board of Education again. We don't want to see that happen. We're optimistic. We still have till midnight tonight. Eric served in the Senate. I served in the Assembly for many years. We know that sometimes the pressure has to cook a little bit, right? The pot has to cook a little bit until the wee hours of the morning. We've seen negotiations happen at the last minute. But we're totally capable of, and we'll be ready to appoint capable people should that be the case. But today we're optimistic that it won't be.
No, well said.
Anybody else?
One more question. And so, while you're doing your appointing, is there a chance that you might go an independent route versus working with the mayor's administration?
You're trying hard here. Today, this is not about mayoral control. Today is about a school system, an educational school, the Department of Education, we believe, not doing enough to ensure that Black and Latino and kids in poverty throughout the city of New York have good opportunities as it relates to gifted and talented programs in schools, and also being well represented in our specialized high schools. We've worked on this since January. We've worked on this whether you have, and mayoral control was not, it wasn't even the conversation, there wasn't a topic of debate until today. We worked really hard. We hope that you look at our recommendations. It's a 22-page report. We have parents testify. We have capable and experts on our commission and committees. And we believe that if these recommendations are accepted by the chancellor, that it could go a long way to remedy a system that has been broken for so long. A system that was broken under the Department of the Board of Education, under mayoral control, and we want to fix it no matter how we proceed moving forward. Okay? Yeah, take the report there, yeah. They want reports there. They can get the reports, absolutely.